Nation, presenting Succession recaps. I'm your host, Negin Farsad, and we are dissecting HBO's hit series Succession because you're the Scorpion and I love you, but you kill me and I kill you. And so today, we will tackle Season 4, Episode 7, titled Tailgate. Don't be confused. This is still the FTN feed, and you will get your regular episode of Fake the Nation on Thursdays. But on Mondays for the next 3 weeks, we will be doing this bonus Succession recap pod. The panel today, folks, it's as shocking as a giant tub of kettle corn in a Manhattan penthouse. We have joining us the artist, the filmmaker, our resident uber wealth expert who has a taste for billionaire kettle corn. It is the incomparable Danielle Derschlag. Hey, Danielle.
Hey, Negin. It's the only kind of kettle corn I'll even look at. Thank you so much for having me.
We also have with us a world-class man of the gab, with whom I've had the pleasure of yucking it up on the Wait, Don't Tell Me panel, but he is most known as senior video editor for the New York Times, and his status as a connoisseur of cool immediately made me want to hear his Succession punditry. It is the one and only Shane O'Neill.
Oh, Negin, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so good to meet you, Danielle.
Great to meet you.
Now, what folks don't know is that I had emailed Shane, like, after, when we knew we were going to do the show, and I said, are you a fan of Succession? I really want to hear your thoughts. And he said, I'm behind, let me catch up. So he did some Succession cramming so that he could join the show. That's what a dedicated Succession head Shane is.
That's how much I love you so much, Negin. I will subject myself to watching a TV show. Did I tell you just how far behind I was, though, Negin?
No,
I want to know.
I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to feel bad if it was a big assignment.
Well, I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to be like, no, I want someone who watches the show. I had seen the pilot and nothing else.
This is incredible. So why hadn't you stuck with it?
So I have a strange relationship with television shows where it's like it's hard for me to get into it alone. I need someone else to watch it with. The Succession had just come out when a friend of mine had surgery, and I was in Wisconsin, just sort of picking things up for her when she couldn't lift things. So we were binging all sorts of TV shows, and I was like, Succession, let's watch it. We'll love it. And we watched the first pilot, and she was like, I don't care about these jerks. I don't want to watch these assholes be assholes to each other. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll catch up with it later. And then I never did. And then it became one of those things that hangs over your head where you're just like, well, it's too late. I'm never going to watch Succession.
Until your podcasting friend.
Honestly, I have
you into it.
I owe such a debt of gratitude to you because I adore the show. And also I finally feel almost like caught up with the zeitgeist, which I never feel. So it feels great. Feels great.
Hooray! Hooray!
Well, before we get into it, if you've enjoyed this pod, and let's say you also enjoy the Thursday regular pod, you can get more pod at patreon.com/Negin Farsad. Your support of the show means so much. And for doing that, you get bonus episodes. For as little as $4 a month, you get 2 bonus episodes of the show. It is a really fun show. Don't forget, last week we had on Isaac Mizrahi. Isaac Mizrahi, who has also been on the regular Thursday Fake the Nation. Those are the kinds of people we have on the show, not to brag. Also the kinds of people, Danielle and Shane. So let me ask you just your first brief thoughts. I'm going to do a formal summary, which is very formal, as you know. As you can see, I put on a tiara for that. But before we get into that, let me know your just first blush reactions. Mine were that, I love that they put a lot of episodes in one location. I mean, there's like a couple in this one, but it was focused mostly on one location. It really, that farcical element of like, in this room, this is happening, and then the door closes, and then these bastards are talking. It's I can't get enough of that. And it's hard, I think, to pull that off in a really like dynamic, propulsive way when it comes to TV. But they pull it off every time. And so that is one thing that I loved about this episode, and that I love about the show in general. Danielle, where were you?
I was really ensconced in my own sense of personal political rage for the majority of this episode.
Yes.
we'll get more into it, but I just felt like this is the day before a terrifying election in the world they're presenting to us, and how little that impacted the characters in that party really got me this time. The claustrophobic kind of sense of filmmaking was really successful, and man, did I walk away even angrier about our politics. I consider that a success.
Shane, how'd you feel?
No, it seems like a pretty functional way to choose a president to me. I didn't have any problem with it. Yeah, I gotta say, my Schadenfreude was at an all-time high, and my empathy was at an all-time low. I mean, this was just like, so every time something bad happened to someone, I was like, too bad, so that was great. And I agree. I think that I do love the show. And however, I do think it's kind of a sacred cow. I think there are problems with the show that we don't talk about. And one of them is that it really is like a tell, don't show a lot. There's a lot of times when a character comes on and tells you something that happened off screen that we don't see. So I agree that having them all sort of almost a bottle episode like this is so great. And the farcical is just the right word, Negin, like where you're just like, oh no, what if they find out they're running away? Which is really great to watch. And I also just I think about it from the writer's dilemma of like, these people have so much access to space that how do you get something where people are looking for privacy and having a hard time finding privacy? So just the setup of them like having to be close to one another in this palatial house, I just really loved it. I thought this was a great one. And also, I'm just so fascinated with the psychosexual dynamic between Tom and Shiv that I loved that was really center stage on this episode.
Oh, totally.
We'll fucking get into it. Let's quickly do a summary. We start the episode with Tom and Shiv back together hosting the election eve tailgate party. To start the day, Tom gifts Shiv a scorpion, because of the universal symbolism of scorpions for gentle love. And still, it's unclear if Tom knows that Shiv is pregnant. Also, before the party, Greg has been tasked with Waystar layoffs, and he liked it because he possibly has no GUI to his center. And we also see the Sibs plus Connor meet at the Jean-Georges in Trump Tower, ? We'll talk about that. And they're there to talk about Dad's funeral and who will be doing the talking. But the party is the main event, and it's full of classic American canapes and the who's who of the conservative movement. But as Kendall points out, hey, they're not all crypto fascists and right-wing nut jobs. We also have some venture capitalist Dems and some centrist ghouls. Dad's ideological range was wide. The Sibs have asked Shiv to invite Nate, her old flame, because they can't get Matsson on price. Maybe they can fuck him on regulatory stuff. Shiv has also gone all in on Matsson, make sure that he's also at the party to kind of counter the regulatory stuff. Connor is still in the race, and despite the fact that his 1 to 4% in Alaska could spoil the vote for Mencken, and despite the fact that Mencken is offering him the ambassadorship of Oman for him and his woman, he is sticking to his guns and not dropping out of the race. Connor and Willa, by the way, are maybe in the healthiest relationship of the entire show. We'll get to that. Ebba, Matsson's blood recipient, spills the beans to the Sibs that basically Matsson's numbers are wildly inflated. India's subscriber data would be right if India were 2 Indias. Shiv freaks out, tries to get some comfort from Tom, but Tom would love to get some love from Shiv. They have the most epic fight on a notably sound-sealed balcony. It is a brutal relationship-ending fight. Kendall makes a play to Frank, basically saying, I'll leave my siblings in the dust if we go reverse Viking and acquire Gojo. With him as the sole CEO, one head, one crown. So, okay, now I really want to get to the Tom and Shiv stuff, but I first feel like we need to have a little bit of an amuse-bouche, just like get in there, warm ourselves up. So let's start with something a little lighter. Is Connor the normal one? The incredible comedian Carolyn Casilia texted me, and she's like, I feel weird that I identify with Connor. And it's a weird position that the writers put us in, that we then feel like Connor's such a great normal dude.
I mean, when you watch anything, I think we're trained to be like, I'm such a Samantha. Oh, I'm a Carrie, and you train yourself to identify.
Right, yeah.
And so I've sort of been trying to do that this whole time of watching it. And usually my conclusion is like, well, they should all be slaughtered. Like, I hate them all. But I will say that Connor, at least, the thing that I have such a hard time with with the 3 other children. And Danielle, you on the podcast really illuminated this for me, because it hadn't occurred to me that like they were facing pressure from their dad not to individuate. That I was just like, why don't they just fucking, open a cafe somewhere or something, or, start a leggings line. I don't know, just to do something other than what this is. But I hadn't really realized how much pressure that he was under. So anyway, all that is just to say that Connor, I relate to the most, just in terms of he's the one who's just like, fuck it, I'm going to New Mexico. I'm just gonna like chill out and want nothing to do with this corporation. So I guess in that sense, he's the most relatable. He also just seems to be like, although Tom is the Midwest representation on the show nominally, Connor seems to jive most with my Midwestern sensibilities of like, it's more important to be nice than to be good. Like, it's more important to just get along than it is to like do the right thing. So I guess I relate to those things more than anyone else. But let's be real. These people are all damaged beyond repair and awful.
Yeah, that's correct. Is Connor the normal one? In what context? Connor is normal for no other human beings, perhaps, than the ones in this very dark, macabre party, right? The thing I would say about him and Willa, the reason why our hearts soar a little bit at their dynamic, a dynamic that's been purchased, I can't say that enough times on this podcast, is because they're not sadists with each other.
Yes.
Yes,
this is a culture of intimacy where intimacy is crafted through sadism. They're one couple who's doing it a little nicer. It doesn't make them ethically better overall, I would say, than these other people, because the impacts on America, democracy, and the world from that couple are still quite negative and scary. But they're nicer about it. They don't just put each other down. I think it speaks a lot to the kind of illness of this culture that we're watching on this show, that counts as pretty great. Just basic niceness between 2 people who sleep together is really a rarity on the show. And that tells you a lot that you need to know about who this people are and what this culture is about.
I would add honesty to that. I mean, Tom is he's a little bit coercive and a little bit manipulative with her, which is always really awful to watch.
Little bit, Jesus.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, I guess I'm revealing myself. But like I feel like that there's still a sort of basic honesty to it, where he's never just like, you must tell me you love me. He's just like, come on, how about me and some money? And she's like, and I always really admire that about Willa too, is that like she doesn't take the bait the way I feel like I would in her position when he's like, do you love me? I feel like I'd be like, of course you do. And then, I don't know, go self-harm somehow. But she just sort of says like maybe I will, or like I'll be happy, or like don't worry about it. I can't remember what her response was. I also just want to throw out there that like little dirty industry, not dirty, it's to erase that, an industry secret of the sex industry is that a lot of times clients do become more than clients, and a lot of times among sex workers, someone that has hired them, they take on relationship dimensions, not often to I think this degree, but I did sort of appreciate that like that element of it people frown upon, but it seems to me, not as I've never been a sex worker, but it just seems like this seemed like a realistic way that I can understand how that framework happens.
Yeah. It's interesting because like I have someone who's sort of in the field adjacent or whatever, and there is a blurring of the social and the business, for sure, that I feel like totally goes on. Quick question: in the scene where, by the way, it makes me crazy when people like meet at just a gorgeous restaurant and no one orders any food.
Oh my
God. Can you imagine being the waitstaff watching these fuckers just sit there in the middle of John George at Trump Tower ordering nothing?
It was the Jean Georges, right? I didn't actually verify this, but a friend told me, and I was like, okay.
For people who know New York and know New York wealth culture, Jean George inside Trump Tower, perfect place for this meeting. Exactly correct.
Right, and it is lovely. I would like to. I mean, I actually have never set foot inside the Trump Tower, or any of the Trump locations, but that said, it was lovely.
Wait, Danielle, why is that? I don't really know anything about Jean George.
So Jean George, first of all, there's been a lot of sort of discourse amongst the 1%, the kinds of folks who go to Jean-Georges. And I have to say, the raw tuna appetizer, unbelievable, everybody. Just to say. But so I have been there, of course, because from a 1% family, my parents took me once on a visit in New York. Basically, it's not easy necessarily to get into that restaurant. And it's really where the high-powered kind of corporate and media elite of New York City tend to congregate. It's also where Trump brought Mitt Romney to humiliate him publicly when Mitt was going up for a job in the administration.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
It has a kind of, let's say, vaguely right-wing political power kind of vibe in that room. I don't think that was chosen mistakenly here.
Yes, that's so cheeky. Well, it's also, I just want to say, you mentioned Danielle, like about you were upset about the politics of the episode.
Yes.
Where I thought you were going with it is that you got flashbacks because they gave us enough of like real humanity through the sort of Rava and Willa and all that stuff that that I was reminded of the feelings of 2016.
Yes.
And I was like, ew, first of all, I don't want to remember. But like, anyways, here we are with 3 episodes of we're going to really fucking remember. So in that Trump Tower, nod is just another way that the show is like forcing me into a fucking really unpleasant memories.
Well, I just also want to remind you, Negin, forget not ordering, which is a great thing. They had 12 delicious pastries on that table that no one touched.
Not a single person touched them.
I just wanted to sweep them into my purse and walk out of that restaurant.
And I was like, can we also just say that when you're a pregnant woman, I fucking ate whatever. I didn't have any rules. So the idea, and like also like you do get like kind of, I would get like unreasonably hungry in a moment. So the idea that Shiv, first of all, didn't even grab a croissant for her purse for later. Because as we established in the last fucking episode, she doesn't ever fucking carry a purse because she's got handlers. But the fact that she didn't gesture to a handler to take a croissant for later, I was offended by all of that, just as a woman.
Well, the thing is that if you're pregnant and you're pretending to do cocaine, then you're pretending to not be hungry, and then it just all
right.
Like pretending to do cocaine.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
Jesus,
right.
That's true. Right. Okay, I'm just hoping she probably has Pringles or something in the limo.
It's
okay,
definitely Pringles.
Yeah, for sure. That's notably what billionaires like to go to when they do potato chips. So let's get into it. We're on Shiv. We're on her non-cocaine snorting habits. Let's talk about what's going on with them. I mean, it was sort of like the scorpion in the morning. It was such a great way to start the day because it was like, oh, you're back together. Oh, this party, we're going to tell everybody. We took a little break and then we're back. And this party is a little, sign of that. And it's totally fine. But also here's a scorpion. So it's like immediately troubled the stability that they're trying to project to each other. And then of course they have, and then we sort of see the unraveling. The other thing I want to point out, they really went hard on Tom being tired. And I just want to be like, Tom, wait for it. You're not even a parent yet. But when Tom, with the thing with Tom being tired, I just also like want to remind everybody that motherfucker has been on like several private jets in the last like 4 days. Like how long? It's been like less than a week, I think, since Logan died. So everyone's tired.
I mean, 2 things. Number one, what a brilliant callback to the pilot, where we see Tom just agonizing over a gift, and the gift is just like goes over like the fucking Titanic. So I loved being like, wow, there's an entire episode that could be on the cutting room floor of Tom deciding on the scorpion, because we know he doesn't take this lightly, and we know that he's obsessed with like the symbolic signifiers here. So I loved the fact of,
so and you're referencing him buying a gift for Logan for his birthday in the pilot, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the watch.
Yes, the watch.
The watch that Logan does not give a shit about, and then gives to the person as hush money, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I just love that it's like, oh, you think you've come so far, Tom, but you are still an outsider in this family, and you can still try as hard as you want, but like you're always going to be a little bit off. And also, as far as him being tired, the closet is an exhausting place, Negin.
You know, it's interesting because Isaac Mizrahi, who I like to just reference casually now.
Do you know Isaac Mizrahi?
He's just one of my regular podcasting buds.
Incredible, incredible.
But he was also talking about Tom being in the closet, and this is funny because it's not something that has been on my radar, but now that Isaac put it on my radar, now that you're mentioning it, I actually have talked about it with a couple of other people who were like, totally. And so I was like, oh, is my gaydar off that I didn't notice that wasn't. I got so Midwesterned by him. I really didn't, you know what I mean? Like it just wasn't on my radar. But
well,
Shane,
Negin,
has that been a thing for you?
I think
this whole 1 week that you've watched the entire series.
It took me several weeks, but no, Negin, I don't know your life. I don't mean to judge you, but I think I may have slept with more closeted Midwestern men than you have.
Oh, interesting.
It's just a guess. I don't know. But no, there's definitely, he's got sugar in his tank. Like and I would say closeted might not even be the right word, or closeted is the right word, but like, bisexual. He seems to genuinely enjoy his relationship with Shiv. And I gotta say, one of the few humanizing things that happened on this show is I was like, oh, I love that he was his sexual experience that he has at the club with the woman who ends up being Roman's girlfriend. I love that he was just like, that was cool. I was like, he's an adventurous guy, I think, behind the scenes. But yeah, no, there's something about his performance, and there's I mean, people have dissected this online too. There's tiny little like implications, but like, yeah, I think he is interested in masculinity in his sexual partners as well as femininity.
And I think he's interested in the practical and the romantic.
Yes.
I think he wants to, I just think he wants Shiv to be like, I'm going to make sure you will run ATN for as long as you want to. That's all he wants to hear from her, money-wise and career-wise. And I love you. Like, I want to be nice to you. I want to think of you. You know what I mean? Like, and it's oddly simple what he wants, I think. And and even though he does so much manipulation and there's so much jockeying and power vying and all this stuff from him, I do believe there's an earnest thing that he wants from her. And and that he has like honest feelings for her, but also sees a practical end game with her. Danielle, what was your take?
Oh my God, what a fucking mess. I mean, I guess, I do think that what's fascinating and brilliant about this final scene, the final sort of speaking scene of the episode, when we're seeing these two really go at each other for what I suspect is the first time in their entire relationship, really scream what they're really feeling. What so struck me about that fight, I don't know if you two felt this way, is that everything both of them says is true.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
It is true that Tom is partly fucking her for her DNA.
Yes.
It is true that he also loves her. It is true that she was casually willing to send him to be an incarcerated person. It is true that he volunteered for that. Nothing stated on that balcony is actually false. But all of these points together in a kind of stew that creates their marriage, their dynamic, it's just really tragically impossible to view that as healthy. That's what that conversation does. And if I can pull back from like a filmmaking perspective, this episode did something so fucking brilliant, which is that in the scorpion scene, they're shot in the same shot, meaning we see both bodies on that sofa together, heads close to each other. From the moment they hit that balcony, you will not see both their faces in a shot. There's a reason for that, because we're really seeing that at the end of the day, after all of the kind of, I would say, grief-enhanced shtupping, if I may use that phrase, after all that grief-enhanced shtupping, we're seeing two people that are in such separate boxes, quite literally, in their feelings, in their understanding of what's happened, that there's probably not a way for reconciliation. They really don't share the screen again from the moment they hit that balcony. That's some very smart filmmaking to visually remind us of how broken these two people are together.
Also, long, narrow balcony.
Oh, but yes, but I had the same thought. But if you go to an early, I checked this at an earlier scene, they do shoot people in the same shot on that balcony. It's possible.
Okay. It's definitely possible, and you have to put them together closer together, which I think would have been really hard for the scene. So all of that is true, but also. Again, like as a filmmaker, I watch some of these scenes and I just start like sweating because I know the setup for that particular thing is so irritating.
Yes.
Like to get the camera to elegantly sit in the thing and like, someone was like basically leaning over to their death to like hold the thing in the right place. And it's so difficult. Anyway.
You also know it's 2:00 in the morning, Negin.
And you also know it's 2:00 in the morning and that everybody's so tired. And then just the previous day they were shooting daytime. So no one has basically slept. And anyway, so it's what they're able to do when there's so many practical pressures just on a production is really remarkable to me. What do you think of this claim, Shane, where she says, "You took away the last 6 months I could have had with my dad"? This thing, she's come back to this of we killed him and this time and all this stuff, like we put him on that plane. She kind of is a little bit more, I don't know, hung up on that than the other siblings seem to be. What do you think, Shane?
I think he was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. I mean, what I took from that was just that, like, this is the problem with a family-run company, is that there's nothing he could have done in that situation that she would have respected, because ostensibly, from Tom's point of view, I think he's like, well, the only rule in this family is to be ruthless and to like jockey for power. And so I'm sure in his mind, I could imagine him being like, it's an act of love for me to stay close to Logan during all of this so that I can like maintain Shiv's position and share information and all of this. And I feel like if one of her brothers had done that, she would have forgiven it or understood it. I viewed that as her just being like, you're never going to be one of us. And I feel like that was sort of the theme of this entire fight, is like, you're never going to be, you're always going to be an outsider. That was the whole theme of this whole episode for Tom, as far as I'm concerned, is that like, there's this machination where even if you play by all of their rules and are just as ruthless and brutal and cruel as the entire system is, if you're not born into it and you're not born, on third base, it's just like they're never going to accept you as one of them. That's what I took from that.
That is so true. And can I add one quick thing that I noticed from wealth culture in this episode that relates to this specifically? Once you enter a family wealth system, especially the one that's kind of, still around a single business. I know someone in this position, a husband who married into such a family. Once you've been their employee in any capacity alongside being a spouse, that will never end. So even if they only paid you for 6 months, right? You came in and you married so-and-so, and for 6 months you said, oh, sure, I'll do the family accounting. I'm an accountant, whatever. You're done. Culturally, you're an employee until your death. One of the things that Tom couldn't have known entering this system is that even though it would afford him this incredible, in quotes, career, by affording him that career, by the family paying his salary, he has absolutely given up any dream of equality. It's done. He's an employee until his death. That's it.
I mean, I would also toss in there, Negin, I think that Siobhan is also doing just like bargaining, magical thinking, grief thinking, that she's just like,
yes,
that she's just like, no, daddy would have taken me to the ice cream parlor if only this one thing.
Right. It's like you wouldn't have seen your dad for those 6 months anyway. Like you would have had like 3 dinners with him and you wouldn't have had a real conversation, and it would have been weird, and you would have been annoyed, and there would have been something, you know what I mean? And that would have been it.
And this is dark, but I have a personal memory of this because I dealt explicitly. I've lost several friends to like addiction. And I remember being like, oh, if only I had reached out, we could have had like final wonderful months together. I'm like, no, they would have just been the same scheming, lying, horrible end stage. You know what I mean? Like, right. But in your head, you're convinced like, oh, if I had just done this one thing, we could have had more time together.
Right.
And that's sort of what I'm seeing, is that she's just like, well, if you had gotten out of my way, Daddy and I would have had a wonderful time at the Ren Fair or whatever.
Logan at the Ren Fair, everybody.
Logan and Shiv both just throwing on their ruffles and petticoats and going to the Ren Fair the way they did, all the way they always did.
Let's get a big turkey leg.
Like another sort of pseudo employee or freelancer of the Waystar Empire. let's talk about the Kendall and Rava scene. I thought this was a really sort of crazy and funny way to start the show. And this is one of those moments where they're bringing us back into the world, where Rava's representing the rest of the planet, reminding Kendall about, oh, by the way, Kendall still has those 2 children. And she basically points out to him that the girl is having a hard time at school because people hate
of him.
Yeah.
Of him.
Yes,
because
exactly. Because of him. The kids have started an actually supportive anti-ATN group. I mean, which I could totally picture that happening because I don't want her to suffer. But you know, she's also like, if you'll recall, I believe she's South Asian. So she's adopted, and you know, she's a brown person. So they're really bringing all of the themes of that, specifically 2016 election, to the fore. And Kendall's like, well, what are we gonna do? You know, tell me exactly what happened. I'm gonna, you know, I gotta figure out what to, you know, how to behave, what to do. And she's just like, he says to Rava, you have no idea the things I'm doing, the things I'm working on, 6 continents, I'm breaking my back, and it's all for them to make the world safe.
Oh my
And
God.
Rava laughs because it was so laughable. This, I think, is one of those moments where you've seen Kendall like have feelings for his children. You've seen Kendall have feelings for the world, right? And for ethics. I mean, where is he in this moment?
I mean, Danielle, I've been reading your face on this Zoom video, and you want to talk about the rage. I mean, I literally screamed into a pillow during this scene. I was so angry. The audacity of this person. It really triggered every bad interaction I've ever had with a man in my entire life. Where I'm just like, where were you? You weren't doing anything. You were actively working against me, and now you're mad at me because it's not going the way that you want when you weren't doing anything. I just thought Rava's performance was incredible, and you just saw that frustration on her face. I also just like, you could just read it of her just like, never mind, I should have just never even told him that our daughter is getting harassed on the street, because he's so messed up that he can't respond with compassion. He only is responding with defense and punishment. I thought it was a brilliant way to open the episode, and I think it really, from an emotional point of view, it really set me up to hate everyone for the rest of the episode. Like, I think it was just like any empathy I had was drained from the gas tank. So yeah, I thought it was an incredible scene.
Can I say something as a parent? Not to like, you guys know that I can fucking I could look at Pol Pot and be like, but he had some good quality. Like, I don't know why I do this, but Kendall, now as a parent, when you're failing as a parent and you deep down know that you're failing as a parent, one of the things that you do is you say stuff like that, where you're like, no, I'm not actually failing as a parent. What I'm doing is I'm working so hard at not seeing them, so that I can make the world a better place. And I mean, it's obviously I feel like I've done this kind of thing because I have to leave my daughter all the time. I'm in a weird business. This business is brutal for parents. And I mean, many businesses are brutal, whatever, economics is brutal for parents. And so I think, I get a little bit where that's coming from, because he does love his children, right? We saw at his birthday when Rava said, the kids left you something, it's in the gift room or whatever, and he nearly destroyed the gift room trying to find it and couldn't find it. I understand those feelings. It is not a perfect love, and it is not even a useful love, but there is love, right? And there's pain. So I will just say, in Kendall's defense, that for whatever reason I feel the need to make, I will just say that. Danielle, what were you going to say?
I'm going to do the opposite of defending Kendall here. I think you're going to be shocked to learn, Negin. First of all, I agree. This is a brilliant start to the episode. And if you'll notice filmically, the very first thing we see in this episode is the hands of some kind of servant. We don't know who that person is. And they're creating a tray that's going to Shiv. We see repeatedly through the episode these inserts of servants' hands preparing food and taking food. It's actually the closest the camera gets to humans in this episode. And I think it relates to this first conversation. Think about where the three of us were the day before the election in 2016. It was a horrible day in our lives and in the country. I don't want to speak for Shade. This is our first time meeting, but I'm going to just vaguely guess not a great day for everybody here. The tension, the sense of potential loss, the fear of white nationalism becoming codified in this country at the highest levels, all of that is happening on this day. But the closest Kendall is going to feel any of that is this story about his daughter, a person we have not seen him in a sequence with since he was quasi drowning in Italy, right? So we've not even seen them on screen together. The closest he's going to feel the terror, the racism, the bigotry of this day is that brief interaction in the morning. And that's it. For most of this episode, this is a room with apparently the 40 most powerful people in America. We know some of them are Democrats, right? The level of sort of jocular lightness with which they are joking about the outcome of this election. The people who will actually be impacted are people like someone's daughter who's a person of color, Kendall's. The people who are holding all of these trays at this party, whose faces we don't really get to see. Those are the humans that are going to be severely and violently impacted if a white nationalist becomes president. But Kendall doesn't view it that way because Kendall doesn't experience it that way. He's too protected in his car to private plane, right? So this is the closest he's going to get the entire time of even feeling a whiff of the terror of this political moment. And it's through his daughter, and he fails it entirely. I thought it was not only an indictment of him as a father, but an indictment of him as a political macher in this system.
Yeah.
So that's my rage was partly because like shitty dads always give me rage. Long story.
Yeah.
But also because for all of us to feel the consequences of what's happening so deeply, and for these people, for it to be mostly a joke with kettle corn and funny bits, I really found that repugnant, disgusting, and truthful.
Let's talk about another repugnant, disgusting, and truthful relationship, which is that between Roman and Jerry. They have what seems to be their final skirmish. Roman seems quite lonely. Like he had Jerry before. Jerry was a bit of a bedrock, and she shows up, and it's funny because Jerry walks in and Roman sees her and says to Frank, "Oh, you smoothed it over, right, General Franco?" And Frank says, "No, she's incredibly angry." And that's just kind of like how we leave it. And so, I think this is one of those moments too where Roman is sort of like, I get to push the envelope and push it and upset people and be disgusting and be repugnant. And people will come back to me. And here Jerry is saying, I will not come back to you. And you can sort of see the life drain out of his face, like realizing that because he had this motherly sexual dick pic sharing relationship with her, with a person who was tender to him in a way. Shane, were you, I was pouring one out I really wanted, in the way that I want characters to end up in a rom-com. I did want to see Jerry and Roman run away together and live in a beautiful little, hut in Mallorca.
Me too. Specifically one that has all the facilities for all their role playing. One where there's a full
sweet
private school classroom, and she's got a million plaid skirts, and she can dress up like Mother Goose, and he can be one of her little fairy, just all of it.
Bring us there, yes.
From a narrative point of view, I just thought it was brilliant because it did occur to me when I was watching it. I was like, there's basically no one else on the planet that can set a boundary for Roman besides Jerry. And so the fact that they really pushed it to where she set a boundary, I thought was incredible. Jerry is such I mean, it's boring to even say it. What a great character! Like all of these are great characters, but I find Jerry to be one of the most fascinating characters on the show. Just like the level of tirelessness and exhaustion and exasperation and wisdom and avarice, just all of it like together. Her essentially, I mean, you could call it extortion. I would say it's just her collecting what's hers in this case.
Right.
But her just being like, no, this, you're going to give me tons of money or I'm going to ruin you. And her final line of like, I could have given it to you. Like we could have secretly wanked together for the rest of our lives, and you could have been the CEO. Also, just a word about Roman. I've been thinking a lot about this because on the show, I'm one of those gay people where I'm always just like, okay, where's the gay person? And I was like, there are no LGBT people on the show. And I was like, what an act of allyship on the creators of this show to leave LGBT people out of this narrative altogether. I was like, usually representation, allyship works where you're like, add the representation. But I'm like, thank you for leaving us out of this. Although I will say, I wish that there were like a Peter Thiel character on the show. I think that would have been really great.
Oh, but that would have been great.
One of the most.
Although Mencken? The Justin Kirk character is I mean, I don't remember very much about the backstory, but he's a little bit of the Peter Thiel character, maybe.
Yeah, I guess I would say just someone like behind a gay fragile person pumping tons of money into other people's things.
Yeah.
However, regarding Roman, because I kept thinking about it. In real life, if this were a real life story, I'm not really familiar with the 1%, or really this is like the 0.25% or something.
Right. Yes. Right.
But I'm like, Roman would have tons of trans women that he has treated horribly in his wake. He's just got the personality of someone who would have done that. And you know what? I'm really grateful that they left that narrative entirely out of this, even though I'm sure there's an off-screen world where like people are being treated even worse than we're seeing. And I'm just so grateful that gay people were just left out of this conversation altogether. Like Taylor Swift asked, I'd really like to not be a part of this conversation, and we're not. It's so good.
Can we talk about Matsson? Now, there's a couple things to say about Matsson, but one is he fucking takes a dump on New York City. He says, only in New York. Like he's talking to Kendall, like, you think this is sort of an only in New York thing. Like, only in New York, nothing happens in New York that doesn't happen anywhere. And I was like, fuck you, Matsson. Do not talk about my boyfriend like that. Only I can talk about my boyfriend like that. Also, what is that fucking jacket? I want to vomit all over it. It is the worst. You're disgusting. You don't even code. You don't even code. Get the fuck out of here. So talk to me, Danielle, about Matsson.
Well, first of all, this jacket deserves a supporting actor award of some kind. Can we take a moment to just honor whoever does costuming on this show? This man walks in wearing a garment that I can only describe as appropriate for a B-level cinematheque somewhere where Connor would be sent to be an ambassador. Okay, this is not a great garment, and you'll notice it's the only garment in the room that has texture and is like goldish in its tone. So our eye always goes to him. It's a brilliant character moment decision, and it's a brilliant sort of visual decision. Matsson is such a fucking piece of shit. You know, one of the things that I loved about this episode is the choice, and it's clearly a choice on the writer's part, to have him and his crew enter the room during a moment of silence for Logan.
So good.
Is there any better way to communicate who is sort of taking up that space? Right. But, you know, to connect this to what we're just talking about with Jerry, there's so many reasons to dislike Matsson. We frankly don't have the time on this podcast. There's so many reasons. But let's talk about the treatment of women just at this party, just in these few hours, right? Jerry, easily one of the most capable people in the room, has to blackmail her way into some kind of financial ascendancy because of the dick pics that she's been sent. We have the Roy brothers pretending to have sympathy and concern for Ebba's sexual harassment at the hands of Matsson, right? When they both know what Roman's been doing for a very long time. And Shiv, the person who's trying to kind of play both sides and find a good space for herself, finds out at the end that not only is she being left out of decisions by her brothers, which we've known for a while, but also Matsson's whole thing is kind of a magic trick with nothing behind it. The numbers in India are false. So she has nowhere to safely land. those are the three main women whose stories arcs we follow in this party. I feel like this show gets misogyny amongst the 0.2% so correct and so right in its particular flavor. And in that moment with Madsson, where he's joking, quote unquote, about firing Ebba in the room, even though this is a party none of us has been to, as I've talked about before, I'm in the 1%, but not where these guys are. You know, this is a different world from the one I grew up in. None of us have been to a party like this, but man, do I believe that women get routinely humiliated the way Ebba's being humiliated in that living room. So on top of everything else, Madsson's casual and ubiquitous misogyny just makes me want to punch him in the fucking face. I guess that's my heartbeat response, Negin. First blush.
Shane Madsson. I mean, in it, what's also interesting though is that Madsson. I love this fraying of him. Where at first he's sort of presented as the future. He's brilliant. He did this. He did that, and that's kind of like how we met Elon Musk. What a fucking brilliant guy. He did everything. Oh, we didn't actually invent that. Okay. And then there's these other, he's actually like, and this Twitter thing, it's like little by, and then he does write these crazy fucking tweets. And they get, there's these just little things, little by little by little by little, that break down this person till you realize, they're fucking not a god at all. And if anything, they're actually quite unskilled. Shane, does Madsson still have it? Like, is he still gonna? Do you think he's still gonna win this race?
Oh God, I am loath to predict anything. But no, I mean, I think the short answer is no, that they're finding out that it's a house of cards. I guess my big takeaway from Madsson on this episode is sort of the way I always feel about Shiv, where I'm just like, she's very good at using the men around her as pawns to get what she needs, because she can't be the queen, as it were, in chess and just sort of like make her own moves. But it's one more reason where I'm just like, girl, just like start your own media company and like girl boss gatekeep, like do your own thing. Like, you don't need these men. Yeah. But she's just reliving this trauma in everything she does, where she feels like she can't do anything without the approval and, manipulation of these men. I would just love for her to leave her brothers high and dry and say, good luck running this company, and to absolutely leave Madsson in his own Norwegian treehouse and just sort of like do her own thing. But that was what I found was like one of the sadder parts of this episode was I was like, Shiv, who, Jerry, I think we can all agree is the most capable person in this universe. Shiv's like a close third or fourth. I mean, she's really savvy and really smart, and yet she still feels the need to like, the only path forward she sees is like manipulating the men around her to get what she wants. And I'm just like, girl, remove yourself.
I feel like she could, if she had taken the Connor route, she would have, instead of having a compound in Arizona called what is it called? Austerlitz. I almost said Auschwitz, which
I heard Auschwitz coming there.
I know. Austerlitz. She would have maybe done something smart.
She would have started like Bustle 2.0. It would have had a good few years.
Exactly.
It would have failed.
That's right.
And then she would have done TED Talks for the rest of her life, written 3 books, and had a great life.
Yes, I just want to point out a really funny line that Madsson said, because basically, he's being coached by Shiv, and he goes, "Oh, I get it. Don't scream. Don't scream. People are data, and stick my dick in the guac." And she's like, "Yes, don't do that." And she says, "But you're doing good out there. You're like a self-teaching AI." Another really great line from Shiv. Now, we just want to close on this. Again, this is one of those situations where we could talk about Succession, the three of us, for the rest of our lives, but sadly we do have to end the podcast, and I want to end it on the scene with Kendall and Frank. Kendall wants to go reverse Viking, acquire Gojo, and fuck over his sibs. Obviously they've all been fucking each other over to certain degrees. I mean, minus Roman. Roman is just so sad in this episode to me. Kendall seems to be continuing to hold his own. He kind of killed it on the Living Plus thing. Now he's out here. He had that little exchange with Madsson, and honestly, I don't know that Madsson came out on top of that. It was a draw, or Kendall came out on top of that little exchange. And now he's going reverse Viking. What do you think? Where's Kendall, Danielle?
So I think Kendall's belief in Kendall is one of the most inspiring relationships in this show. What's amazing to me is how many times Kendall, with those crazy Kendall eyes, gets Frank privately and says, let's blow up the ship. And how many times Frank says, okay, I guess so. That's worked out 0 times.
0 times.
Right. So like if the pattern of the show is teaching us, then my guess would be this is not going to go well. But the sentence from that exchange that I really underlined and wanted to talk about is bigger than Dad ever was. To go back to sort of my basic enmeshment premise about what happens in wealth culture, these people are not thinking about the bottom line. They're certainly not thinking about shareholders. They're definitely not thinking about democracy. They're thinking about, if I may get crass for a moment, was Daddy's dick bigger or can my dick be bigger? That's really fundamentally what this comes down to. And when that's combined with this amount of power, that's really terrifying. I think what Kendall is revealing here is that his grief process is one of trying to replace who was on the throne rather than look carefully at the system and say, do I want this system? You know, in that moment when he's trying to pitch Nate on regulatory stuff, and Nate says, hey, you're not Logan and I'm not Gil, and that's a good thing. Nate is saying to him, we don't have to be these guys. We can actually change this landscape. Kendall doesn't have the capacity to hear that. There's smaller than Daddy and there's bigger than Daddy. So he will do anything to get to the ladder. That's what I was hearing in this final conversation. And all I can say to Frank is run for your fucking life, Frank.
Well, also,
never worked out.
Frank, what are you doing? Like Frank and Jerry and the other one was the other
Carl.
Carl.
I've
said this before, like, you're rich. It's fine. Just like quit. Why does Jerry even want to stay? Why does Jerry care that she's not on the kill list? Get out. Who cares? Like it's cool. You did it. I mean, you're rich. I don't get it.
The word enough is cultural as much as it's anything.
Right.
In this culture, absolutely. The word enough doesn't exist. That's why.
Right. And you know, again, and I think, speaking as someone who has my own little issues as like an accolade whore, as like an as an achievement obsessive, I get it, you know, I get it.
Let me just tell you, Negin, you are great and you did it.
That's right. I could not agree more. Yes.
All right. Well, do we have any final thoughts? Because we have to wrap it up. Shane.
Just last, when we're talking about Kendall, I think it's such a good representation of addiction in that, like, I'm viewing this as a season of him in a maintenance phase where I imagine him doing all the addict math off camera of like, well, if I just have 3 drinks at this party, I'll be fine, and blah, blah, blah. But his fundamental addiction is chaos, and that's just what I see all the time. And that's what I saw with this thing with Frank, where it's like he could be running things perfectly, it could be the most successful company in the world, and he would find a way to blow it up because that's what his real vice.
He likes.
His real vice is chaos.
Well said. That's right.
Yeah. Final thoughts, Danielle?
You know, I was just really struck that the episode ended on Tom's face, and the fact that, you know, we'd finally see Tom scream at someone in a self-advocating way. My new shitty prediction, because as you know, Negin, they never come true. My new shitty prediction is that Tom fucks over this whole family and tries to take it in the last few episodes because he's come to realize there is no one there in his corner. So it's blow it up or death.
Also, I want to give ourselves a pat on the back because I do believe we talked about the idea of, you know, Connor having some sort of percentage and that playing a role in the election, which it already has. Also, one of my favorite lines is when Willa asks about Oman and like whether the compound would be above ground. but then also Connor's like, you'll get diplomatic immunity, you could drive on the sidewalk, and she said running people over is not a selling point. Which again, little just moments of humanity in there, just a reminder that it's not, you know, that's not a selling point. Folks, this was such a phenomenal recap episode. I would love for the people of Fake the Nation to be able to follow you and all the wonderful things that you do. Danielle, where do they do that?
I love being here with you guys. You can find me at DanielleDurschlag.com, my website, and on Instagram, I'm at ddurch, which is DDURCH. I'd love to hear what you thought of this episode.
And Shane, where do they find you?
I am on Instagram as Shane Island. And yeah, tell me what you thought. Tell me, I want the queers and the addicts to talk to me. Those are my people.
Yes, specifically queers and addicts. Reach out to Shane and all of us, and we're here to support you. I am, you know where to find me on all of the things, and I want to thank our wonderful producer, Andrew McGuire, and our wonderful theme music, which is Fake the Nation, inspired by Succession, was written by Gavi Alter. And folks, your regular episode of Fake the Nation will be in your feed on Thursday, so don't forget about that. If you have any thoughts, people have really enjoyed this recap. So if you have any thoughts of other shows that I should be recapping, please hit me up. You can do that at fakethenationpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's fakethenationpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me in all the things. We've been getting some votes for beef, interestingly. So let me know, what do you think? You know, we will sort of, I'm thinking probably maybe gently keep this going for other shows, because we've had such a fun time doing it, and you know, people have really been fired up about the takes. And so thank you so much to everyone at HeadGum for making the show a possibility, and we will be back in your earballs on Thursday.